Yo, what is up, everybody? And we are finally back on the Wildcat Wire. And this time, this is episode 6. We're going to jump right into the 2018 NSAA Class A football playoffs. And, it was a great end of the season, Jake, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'd say it was a pretty good end of the season. Kind of a lot of chaos kind of has ensued through the season, and now we're here. Just excited to see how the playoffs are going to play out this season.
Yeah, and last year we had everything went pretty crazy, and I think this year it's going to be even more because of the fact that you look at this top to bottom, there are 10 or 11 teams where you could pretty much say they have a good chance at winning the state championship this year.
Yeah, this has probably been one of the more competitive years that we've seen in a while. Just so many teams have been able to beat some bigger teams. For example, Lincoln East was able to beat Millard West on their home field, and some lower teams have been able to compete and stuff. So, it's kind of there's only one team I really feel that's at the top that's kind of ahead of everyone else, and that is Omaha Burke.
We're gonna start off. Omaha Burke is the number 1 seed. And they did win pretty handily against Papillion Nabisco last Friday, and that's who they have again this Friday night. But I really don't think that they're going to be able to compete if Nick Henrich isn't healthy. Because I remember he did get hurt against Millard North. There was some talk that he did tear his ACL and he'd be done. They're still saying, well, he has a chance at coming back. It might not have been torn. So we will see, but, that is the key for the Burke team. They have to have Nick on that defensive side of the ball if they really want to compete and kind of show their dominance over everybody else in Class A.
Well, in my opinion, I just feel losing Nick is a big deal, but I feel just how with their offensive firepower with Chris Hickman and just them as a team, they've been able to go undefeated this year even without him. It'll be really hard for other teams to kind of compete against them just because it just feels like they're really ahead of everyone else, Nate.
Yeah, and that's kind of what showed when Millard West played them back in week 2 was, that was probably their toughest challenge of the year, and they won 31-14, and it wasn't even that close most of the game. It felt like it maybe started to turn towards the beginning of the second half, and we might have a close game. But Burke was just able to show, no one can mess with us, and we're just that good. And I think mainly, most of it came from the running game and Nick Henrich. And so I just don't quite know if they'll be able to be as good. I know they're still a great team. James Burks had 193 on 19 carries. That's crazy. And so I just don't know if they're as strong with someone who has over 100 tackles on the season running that defense. And he's almost one of the biggest player. He is probably the biggest player for that team. He's the heart and soul, the mental leader, the emotional guy there on the sidelines, getting everybody going and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how Omaha Burke plays. And, it's the playoffs. Anything can happen. And I'm not going to 100% count out Papillion Nabisco from knocking off Omaha Burke. But Burke should easily move into the second round.
Yeah, I think Burke should move there. Let's kind of move on to the 2-15 matchup of Millard South versus Lincoln Pius. I honestly kind of feel that this is kind of a upset kind of matchup between Millard South and Pius.
Yeah, they played again back in week 2, and that game was 3-4 points. Millard South ended up squeaking it out on the road. But this Pius team they put some pretty big challenges on a lot of teams so far this year, and I know their record of 5-4 doesn't completely show for it, but they're a tough team, and they're really someone that you do not want to go up against.
Yeah, let's kind of talk about Millard South's season. Millard South 8-1. They've had a pretty good year. Their only loss is a close one to Millard West, 34-27 in overtime. But let's talk about their game against Westside last Thursday.
Yeah, that was a crazy ending. you would never think that a team, West Side missing the 2-point conversion in the fourth quarter and then going down and getting a safety, Millard South winning 14-13 on a safety.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the craziest things that you'll probably ever see. And so, I mean, that was a big matchup, and it was just a smash up between two heavyweights. Omaha West Side had a really good season. They're 8-1 as well. We'll get to them in a few minutes here. But Millard South is still just really good offensively. TJ Urbon and Isaiah Harris are one of the best duos in the state, like in Class A, in the backfield for them.
Yeah, let's move on to Bellevue West and Kearney. You know, Bellevue West, they're one of the most high-scoring offenses in Nebraska. Their only loss coming in a shootout against Omaha North. Kind of talk about Bellevue West, Nate.
Bellevue West is so good. I mean, I really don't know how else to put it, but they're going to score. Their main thing is going to be, we're going to put up a shootout against you. We're not going to play defense. We're going to make you keep up with us on offense. And so, I mean, you talk about that 52-49 game against Omaha North. I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, man, like, how can someone keep up with a team like Bellevue West, and how can Omaha North put up 52 points against them? I mean, Ducker and Betts are extremely good players. They're both going to go play in a Power 5 conference, and they're both juniors right now, so they still have their senior year. And, I mean, their offense is high-flying, and I don't know if anyone can stop them. But, I mean, we saw Omaha North do it, so we know someone can.
Yeah, you know, Bellevue West, I've been watching their offense. They have such a high-power offense. I feel like they're one team that can go to state and even knock off Burke just because of how good their offense is. Let's move on to Omaha West Side. Their only loss to Millard South, the game we talked about, versus Lincoln East. Lincoln East, not the best team, but they did get that win against Millard West. Kind of talk about this matchup.
I mean, I just want to touch base on Kearney. Kearney's a pretty good team. I think they could give Bellevue West a little bit of a challenge, but Bellevue West should squeak by. Going back to West Side and Lincoln East, I mean, Lincoln East was kind of just caught in a bad state with their district of Grand Island and Millard West. But, I mean, they made it in the playoffs. They finished third behind the two teams. They had a 5-4 record. They're not a bad team, but, I mean, West Side should probably be able to get by them. I mean, this Omaha West Side team, a lot of people were kind of speculating about them. I mean, I had them as one of my dark horses to kind of make a deep run through the season. And, I mean, they really didn't have a challenge, I think. Their toughest game was against Millard South. Otherwise, the only other, top 10 caliber team they played was Prep. And, I mean, they won, 36-2 that game or something like that. Mm-hmm. They just completely dominated them. And so, Avante Dickerson has been running all over the place over everybody. And I think that he'll do it again this week, and they should move on to the second round.
Yeah. Lincoln East, they are an upset-minded team. Like I said, they upset Millard West earlier in the season, just a couple weeks ago. But, yeah, I agree. Omaha West Side is probably just too strong, and we'll probably move on to that second round. Let's move on to Millard West versus Creighton Prep. I feel this is going to be a pretty good game. You know, Creighton Prep, they've really played some of the toughest schools in the state, got some losses from there, and then Millard West. A season where it's kind of been frustrating a bit. I mean, yes, 7-2 is a really good record, but a loss like to Lincoln East where it's different than being the 5 seed and maybe even the 2 seed. You know, it's kind of like a struggle, but anyways. But nevertheless, they are the 5 seed, and how do you kind of feel about Millard West in this matchup?
I mean, they win that game against Lincoln East. That's the difference between the 1 seed and the 5 seed. You have home field all the way through, and you're technically the home team when you play at Memorial Stadium if you get to the state championship game. So it's such a demoralizing loss for a team, but it kind of gives them a wake-up call. Like, when we were talking to Dallas Beanham about it, he's just like, yeah, I think the thing was we kind of got off of ourselves. We were like, oh, we're the number one team. We're fine. Like, we really don't have much work to do, and they didn't go out and they didn't play their best game. So, I mean, they're ready to play, and I think you look at this prep team, the way they always play is kind of the old style Nebraska. They're going to smash it down your throat the whole entire game. They're going to play tough defense. They're going to be good up front. But I don't think that they have the skill position players that kind of match up with a team like Millard West. And so they're going to have a tough time if they try to throw the ball on them. I think Millard West should be able to get some bigger plays. Like, this Millard West offense isn't that flashy. You know, you have Dallas Beanham, but outside of that, they really haven't had a lot of big plays this year. It's been a lot of those, 20, 30 yards where that's kind of like the max that they've had. I really only think the one giant one they had was against Grand Island with Garrett Kennedy on a 55-yard touchdown. So, I mean, that game is going to be tough, and both teams are just going to – it's going to be a matchup of who's going to be better up front.
Yeah, but I feel with that game, as we saw in the Millard West North Star game, Millard West started showing off a lot of option in it, and just a lot of different plays they kind of haven't really showed off, kind of pulled them deep in their playbook, and kind of maybe a up-and-coming star for this Millard West team, Dan Sullivan, really was able to show up in that game.
Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns. He put on quite the 4 touchdowns, yeah, including that kickoff return. Quite the game he had. And so, I mean, it's going to be a really good game on Friday. And, I mean, I think Millard West should still be able to get through against a still pretty good Creighton prep team.
Yeah, they should be able to move on from that. Let's kind of move on to the 6 and 11 game. Lincoln High, they've been pretty high in the rankings for most of the season, kind of fell down a bit against an Elkhorn South team who just came off a big win against Prep.
That's Elkhorn South is not a team that you can overlook. They're 6-3, first season up from Class B, but I mean they've kind of showed 2 of their losses were, one was against Bellevue West where they lost, and the other one was against Millard South. They got all the way down to the 1-yard line. They had a chance to win with 1 second left. They just weren't quite able to get it done. So I mean, Lincoln High is I feel like is an underrated team. They're ranked 2nd right now in the Omaha World Herald rankings. They played against a really good Lincoln Southwest team this past Friday. They scored on their first 5 straight possessions, and that game was over in the matter of 10, 20 minutes. And so, I mean, they're so good offensively. They're almost like Bellevue West, except they don't have the big-name players that they do. I know Cedric Case is such a good quarterback, and he's led that team well for the past 2 years. Isaiah Alford has had a great season as well. So, I mean, I really think this Lincoln High team can make some big noise, and they can even beat Bellevue West on that second weekend.
Yeah, and how about this game? I feel this is going to be one of the more closer games in the tournament. Grand Island versus Omaha North.
2 very, very, very similar teams. They're both going to try and run the ball as fast as they can. I know Grand Island plays they play a no-huddle type offense. They're going to play with some tempo against that Omaha North team. But Omaha North is Xander Gray. It's just going to keep running the ball at you. And he just seems like he never gets tired. Mm-hmm. Like, Larry Martin will just pull him out of the game because he just doesn't want to play him. But Xander is like, get me back in the game. I need to keep running the ball. And he will put up, I wouldn't even be surprised if he put up 400 yards in a game. But, I mean, it'll be tough it's going to be a really close game. I mean, I think it's going to be, just like I said, Millard West and Creighton Prep. Whoever wins the battle up front is going to win that game.
Yeah, I think that for me, I feel that might be my first kind of like upset in the playoff. Is pretty much I think Omaha North, just the way they played against Bellevue East. I think they're just gonna run all over Grand Island and ultimately win that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot of who's not going to turn the ball over and who's going to make the most of their possessions, because that's what Omaha North did well. They had some great special teams play. They didn't turn the ball over against Bellevue West, and that's how they won. And I mean, like I said in the very beginning, 1 through 10, 1 through 11, you can really, any of those teams can really, really make a statement. And I think even though this Omaha North team started slow, they're 6-3, they have a really good shot at still making it to the state championship game and winning. Because you look at that side of the bracket that they have, they have Bellevue West and Millard South. I feel like they can match up against Millard South very, very, very well. And they beat Bellevue West still earlier this season. So, I mean, they should still have a really good opportunity to make it really far if they win this game against Grand Island. And Grand Island's no joke.
Yeah, let's kind of get into our last playoff game we're probably going to talk about today is Lincoln Southeast and Lincoln Southwest. I would say they're pretty much like rivals up there in Lincoln. Could be a good matchup. What are you feeling on that game?
I mean, Lincoln Southwest was in the top 10 for quite a while. But, I mean, they just kind of slipped out. And I feel like a lot of people expected more out of them. They're a 7-2 team this year. And, I mean, they didn't put up much of a fight against Lincoln High. Like I said, Lincoln High scored on 5 straight possessions in the first half, and that game was over before this halftime. So, I mean, Southeast will give them a really good challenge. I got to be honest, I don't really know a lot about both those teams. But, I mean, they're the 8 and 9 teams for a reason. They're 7-2, 6-3, respectfully, for a reason. They're still really good teams, and that'll be a really good rivalry game in the first round of the playoffs.
So, how are you kind of feeling for, the rest of the playoffs? So, who do you think's going to win it? Who do you think could be a surprise team?
I mean, I think your 2 biggest surprise teams have to be Lincoln High and Omaha North, just because of the way that they play. They have 2 big games in the first round, and they're going to have to get through those. I mean, if Lincoln High wins, they're going to play the winner of Bellevue West and Kearney. They played a double overtime against Bellevue West week 1 of the season. They ended up losing, but, I mean, I feel like they are a lot better team than they were in those first few weeks, and I think everyone is. But this Lincoln High team is no joke, and they can go all the way if they choose to. And Omaha North, I mean, the way that they've been playing lately, they should make it at least to the semifinals, I would say, for them to actually feel good about themselves. Just because this Omaha North is not a bad team. And, I mean, we said that they went into Grand Island a couple of years ago when we were freshmen, and they played their socks off against Grand Island in the cold and rain. And they won. I'm pretty sure they handled them, very, very well. Grand Island was a 3 seed that year. They were 8-1, I believe, on the season, or 9-0. And Omaha North was 4-5. I mean, they ended up making it to the semifinals. So you can never underestimate the power of a Larry Martin team in October and November, and I think that they should be able to make it really far.
Yeah. So, how are we kind of feeling about Millard West? In my personal feeling, I think that Millard West is going to beat Creighton Prep, probably win the matchup between Lincoln East and Omaha West Side, but I think they'll ultimately probably lose to Burke in the semifinals.
I mean, like I said, it's going to depend a lot on how good Omaha Burke is without Nick Henrich. And, I mean, they didn't have a toughest challenge this past game without him. So, we'll see how they play. But, I mean, if you're Millard West, you really have to have the mentality of, we're going to have to fight. Because it doesn't matter who you play. This first game against Prep is going to be tough. And you're going to have to play 100%. You're going to have to come out ready to play. You're going to have to play all 48 minutes. And, I mean, that was kind of problem last year was you got in that game against Burke, you got up 20 in the fourth quarter. I mean, I feel like they just took their foot off the gas a little bit and said, we can cruise through this, get to the next week. You can't do that. You're going to have to continue to fight all 48 minutes, and I think this team should be able to do it. They should make it through against Prep the first round, but, I mean, potential rematch against Lincoln East, I mean, a lot of these players are saying, yeah, we really should have won that game, and they're really not that good. But, I mean, it's playoff time, and anybody can show up, anybody can play well on any given night. And so, like I said, they're going to have to play 48 minutes. It'll be tough, whoever they play. They should make it through Prep. We'll have to see about Omaha West Side, but, I mean, your main focus has to be winning their first game, and that's for every team in the playoffs.
I think that's going to do it for us here on the Wildcat Wire. I'm Jake Janasek.
And I'm Nate Thomas. We'll catch you guys next time.